there was no technology for determining how far east or west you were, longitude. Well, Admiral Sir Cloudesley Shovel was infuriated when a sailor from the West Country told him that he was about 20 miles too far east and was likely to wreck the fleet on the coast. When his officers assured him that the course was correct, he had the sailor hanged for insubordination. In his last dying moments, he must have wished that he hadn't.
Ships before had foundered in thousands, but now the loss of an entire fleet started the hunt for an accurate clock which would enable the calculation of longitude. It would take 2 more generations before it was finally developed. Yet the Piri-Reis map, made 250 years earlier, already shows knowledge of longitude.
On the Piri-Reis map is mentioned the fact that it's compiled from many other source maps. These are copies of copies of copies. Most of the people who've researched this believe that the maps went back to at least the time of Alexander the Great, but they are really much older than even that.
Maps of the world, drawn way before we learned to sail the oceans. Unexplained building technology, sophisticated knowledge of mathematics, astronomy.
If there was such an advanced civilization capable of passing on its knowledge to the Sphinx builders, to the people of the Andes and Mexico, what happened to it? Well, Plato said that there was such a technologically advanced civilization able to sail the oceans of the world. Atlantis, lying on a huge island continent.
Rejecting a lost civilization, science equally rejects the notion of a worldwide catastrophe that destroyed it. But the accounts of Plato or the Bible do not stand alone.
The Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Mayans, speaks of huge tidal waves and floods, of skies that darken for months on end, of indescribable cold and black rain and hail.
The ancient Egyptians talked of a time of chaos, floods and darkness, from which the gods emerged to shape the land of Egypt. The sun disk of the Aztec speaks of 4 cycles of destruction: by flood, by fire, by wind, and by blood and war, and foresees the end of the world by upheaval from the bowels of the earth. Myths from elsewhere in Asia and America speak of apocalyptic floods, of a deluge of fire from volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. They speak with a disturbing realism of a past that we can neither clearly remember nor entirely forget. Scholars are inclined to believe that the flood is the fantasy of ancient poets. But suppose the scholars are wrong. Suppose some series of terrible natural catastrophes did reduce our ancestors to small groups living far apart, scattered all over the world. What we're looking for is some epoch that fits the myths as snugly as the slipper fits Cinderella's foot.
A clue. The La Brea tar pit of California. Mass grave for over 1 million animals, now turned into a tourist attraction.
Well, deep below the surface here, you have the Salt Lake oil field. Asphalt seeps out through the cracks and fissures like a tremendous flypaper, and it catches animals in the asphalt. And we have incredible resources here from the animals that were trapped in this method during the last 40,000 years.
The tar pits read like a book of ancient times, when animals abounded which we never thought of as indigenous to America at all. Mammoths, elephants, rhinos, giant sloths, saber-toothed tigers, even horses and camels. Then a huge catastrophe wiped them out, apparently within a few decades. The time is around 10,500 BC, over 12,000 years ago.
The big animals, any mammal larger than a coyote, largely became extinct within a few tens of years. Yes, that is, in fact, a great catastrophe.
A record of catastrophe. The end of the Ice Age, 10,500 BC, over 12,000 years ago. Temperatures that had remained relatively stable for thousands of years suddenly shoot upwards. A staggering increase of over 5 degrees in the twinkling of an eye, a period of 3 to 10 years only. That is the amazing discovery of scientists who drilled into Greenland's ice cap to investigate changes in the atmosphere.
This Greenland ice core, some people have called it the Rosetta Stone of climate, because to be able to see that climate can shift so quickly was really a major find. And that change occurred over maybe 3 years to only a couple of decades, close to what we see today. We had found phenomenal changes in the chemistry of the ice. We found that during the period when the ice sheets were starting to melt away, that we have more signals of volcanic deposition and of greater magnitude, or greater concentrations than at any other time over the last 110,000 years that we've measured.
Unprecedented volcanic upheaval coupled with atmospheric turmoil and huge floods. For as ice sheets over a mile thick melted within decades, sea level shot up by 4,500 feet. Suddenly seas appeared where land had been.
You could walk from Great Britain to Scandinavia at a time when a climatic revolution shaped the North Sea. It was a time when great floods covered the plains of North America so that the skeletons of whales are found in Michigan. A time of cataclysm at the end of the Ice Age, which may fit the myth. In the New World alone, about 70 kinds of animals became extinct. Saber-toothed cats, mammoths, giant sloths, horses, camels. Let me just put that in perspective. Over the previous 200,000 years, less than 1/3 of that number had become extinct. And that same extraordinary pattern of extinction was repeated over Europe and Asia.
In the permafrost of Siberia and Alaska, tangled masses of bones are found of millions of animals which perished in a cataclysm. The giant mammoth didn't fall victim to the hunters of prehistory. He was felled by natural catastrophe. At the turn of the century, Siberian hunters stumbled across the frozen skull of one huge animal. When it was dug out and transported, its stomach was found to contain undigested plants from a temperate climate. The animal had been deep frozen faster than any modern freezer is capable of.
What is certain is that some 12 or 13,000 years ago, a terrible cold descended on Siberia and hasn't relaxed its grip ever since. This riddle of the instant frozen mammoths has given way to some strange anecdotes, some true, some untrue, like the mammoth steak served in Fairbanks, Alaska. But what is certainly authentic is a report by the Russian 19th century naturalist Baron Wrangel, who discovered Bear Island, which is north of Siberia, and where the sand was literally held together by reefs